Hey guys, Pastor Channer here, coming at you with another commentary set review. In this video, I want to talk about a commentary set that I think is a little bit underrated out there, okay? Especially amongst evangelicals. This is the Interpretation Commentary series, okay? This is 43 volumes, and it runs roughly $700 full MSRP on Logos, okay? Put out by Louisville, Westminster John Knox Press. I think this commentary set deserves some attention, at least a little bit more than it currently gets. Now, let me go ahead and tell you a little bit about it. Now, this commentary set is a little bit older. Some of the volumes in the series are over 40 years old at this point, and I believe the set itself was finished over a decade ago. So you're not getting the most cutting-edge research or scholarship. On that front, the commentary set is not as focused on in-depth exegesis, it's not as critical, and it's not trying to give you that full academic treatment. However, this thing is not an expositional commentary either. It's not actually trying to give you just illustrations, applications, random thoughts, or devotional ideas. Instead, this commentary tries to do something in between these two fronts, and frankly, I think it actually succeeds remarkably well. Now, if you check out this set on Logos's website, you can actually see that it has many 5-star reviews by many users, okay? Several comments are put in there. One person said this is one of the better resources that all students and pastors should have at hand. Another person said these commentaries are an exceptional resource for both scholarship and preaching. So there's a lot of love for these sets. However, one thing you might be interested in is that one person criticized this set for not being conservative enough, okay? So you might be careful about the different interpretations you're getting from this series. Now, when you head over to bestcommentaries.com, many of these volumes do not perform at the highest tier or the highest level. If you're looking for each book of the Bible, you're often going to see the fact that these volumes are showing up 15th, 20th in terms of the overall ranking. However, there are a few standout volumes, okay? Exodus scored 4th, 1 Corinthians scores 4th, Numbers scores 5th, 1st and 2nd Thessalonians scores 5th, Judges, Joshua, Deuteronomy are all 6th to 8th, etc. So there are some good volumes in this set, but it's a little bit of a mixed bag. You're not getting everything being a standout commentary. And it's at this point that I want to mention Tremper Longman and D.A. Carson's opinions of the set. It's interesting because Tremper Longman gives this set a 4 out of 5, okay? If you look here, he says this series bridges the gap between scholarly investigation and contemporary relevance. Moderately critical, the series is readable and interesting. 4 out of 5. That's a pretty good treatment. But D.A. Carson does not feel the same, okay? D.A. Carson said this about one volume. He says, this volume is slender in both volume and substance, okay? And at another point, he says, the interpretation series of commentaries focuses less on detailed exegesis than on the thrust and themes of biblical books, presented in a way best calculated to help the preacher and relate the text to a wider context. Listen, the aim is admirable, the execution is mixed, partly because of the thinness of the exegesis sometimes allows room for too much speculation, okay? So it was very interesting to me that Tremper Longman and D.A. Carson both view this set differently. And I actually think that is partially characteristic of the mixed bag I mentioned before. Many of the standout volumes are actually in the Old Testament, whereas many of the volumes that are only of passing interest are actually in the New Testament, okay? And D.A. Carson is, of course, writing his commentary survey from a New Testament perspective, whereas Longman focuses on the Old Testament. So if you're thinking about this set, remember that it's stronger in the Old Testament than it is in the New. However, that doesn't mean that the New Testament is without its good volumes. D.A. Carson himself says this about Thomas Oden's volume. It is a remarkable work, well written and defending Pauline authorship, but it is not a traditional commentary, okay? So just keep that in mind. Reviews from other scholars are similarly mixed. Dr. Lane says this is clear and readable, and it's trying to be helpful to the pastor. It's generally not conservative, though it usually tries to treat the text seriously. I think that's a good and important quote that summarizes it well. Roscup notes that the emphasis is on literary and theological points, offering help for the more academically minded, as Brown does on Ecclesiastes. Candidly, the reviewer did not find nearly as much help overall as in many other works. So again, you're getting that mixed bag. So that's what the experts think, but what did I think about the set? Now, those of you who have seen my commentary reviews before, I am not trying to be exhaustive. I did not read these volumes all the way through. But what I do is I instead go to each book of the Bible and I look up a particularly contentious verse, one of those more challenging ones, and I read what each author has to say in that particular pericope, okay? And as I went through, I found some very interesting comments, some very interesting ideas. I did notice that the Old Testament was more thought-provoking at times than the New Testament was, so that's something I noticed. But I also liked many of the volumes in the New Testament as well. But overall, I thought there were good breakdowns, thoughtful comments, if a bit liberal at times, and I thought there were some excellent insights here. One of the things I value most about this set is that it causes me to think outside the box, okay? I really enjoyed that. Many times there were interpretations that were offered that I couldn't find elsewhere and that I would never have thought of when I first came to the text. For example, notice this comment from Richard Hayes on 1 Corinthians 6:18. He is going through trying to understand how to actually translate this verse. The verse says, "Flee from sexual immorality. Every other sin a person commits is outside the body, but the sexually immoral person sins against his own body." Hayes says this, that in the middle of this verse is actually a parenthetical thought that the Corinthians would posit against Paul. So it would read as follows. First, Paul says, "Flee fornication." Then the Corinthians say, "Every sin a person commits is outside the body," followed up by Paul responding with, "But the fornicator sins against his own body." Now, don't get me wrong. I don't know that I'm compelled by this idea, but it is a very novel interpretation, and I appreciate that when I'm consulting commentaries because it causes me to think in a very unique way. Another example of this sort of thought-provoking comment was found in Judges. As I was reading through the story of Barak, Deborah, Jael, etc., I actually ran across a very interesting thought that was embedded in the last paragraph of this commentary. What I found so fascinating is that when I listened to a sermon by Gordon Hugenberger on this very pericope, I actually found him spouting off some of these ideas. I would not be surprised at all if Hugenberger himself referenced the Judges commentary here from the interpretation series and was able to insert some very thought-provoking comments from that sermon. Many other examples could be multiplied, but now I want to give you some of my final numbers. First, on the topic of exegesis. I give this series a 3 out of 5 when it comes to exegesis. Don't get me wrong, it is not an exegetical commentary, but it doesn't skirt around issues either. It tries to address things in a straightforward fashion, and oftentimes that leads to exegetical discussion. Next, guys, exposition. For exposition, I give it a 3.5 out of 5. It's slightly better in this regard because you're not getting word level or grammar level discussions, but instead a lot more thoughtful engagement with the theological ideas of the text. That leads to good exposition. It's very thought-provoking, and I appreciate what it brought to the table on this front. All right, guys, my next category is a little bit weird, but this is the category of creativity. This is really important to me in a commentary set because I don't need more of the same every time I'm referencing commentaries. If I reference 3, 4, 5 commentaries that are all saying the same thing, I'm wasting my time. So I really value the creativity category when it comes to commentaries. And guys, this is where I think this commentary shines. I give it a 4 out of 5 in creativity. I waffled between 3.5 out of 5 versus 4 out of 5, but enough of the volumes were actually thought-provoking enough that I thought it deserved a full 4. Usually the comments are thought-provoking in a way that sparks my creativity and starts me thinking along interesting lines in the text. Now, if you are trying to reference a commentary set like this for very solid, fundamentalist, or foundational exegesis, you might pass on this set because I don't think that's what it offers here. In that case, you want my creativity rating to be pretty low. But for what it offers, I think it's very helpful. Guys, this commentary set on the difficulty scale is very accessible. I give it a 3 out of 5. That's not the easiest rating it could receive because, sometimes it does reference the original languages or dives into some historical background that you may not have a lot of information on. But I really appreciate the fact that it was a little bit more in-depth and yet tried to be accessible. 3 out of 5. For layout, guys, overall, I give it a 3.5 out of 5. There were some commentaries that were actually really excellent in regards to the layout, but there were others that just didn't cut the mustard. I actually feel at times that the pericopes were too large, and so if you're swimming through 10 paragraphs trying to find where they comment about your specific verse, it may be a little bit more challenging. My final summary thoughts come down to this. This is a good middle-of-the-road set that can get you by in most situations. Unevenness does hurt it in some places, and it's generally weaker in the New Testament, so you may need some supplementation there. It's also not as conservative as some may like. However, this might be the set's biggest strength. It may itself serve as a good supplement, okay? Do you already have good conservative and thorough offerings? Well, maybe consult this one a little bit early on for an easy-to-reach second opinion that is not going to toe the party line. And that's exactly what I like it for. It's accessible, it's not overly in depth. And so, if I've already got good exegetical insights, I turn to this one third or maybe fourth to start sparking my imagination going along different lines. I really enjoyed the interpretation commentary series. And if you're looking for something to really rev your imagination, this might be one that helps you out quite a bit. That's it for me, guys. What do you think about the interpretation commentary series? I'm interested to know in the comments down below. We really appreciate all the love and support that you give us here on the Pastor Tanner YouTube channel. Please feel free to click the Patreon link down below if you'd like to support us further, or utilize our Logos affiliate links if you'd like to give me a small commission. Thanks for all of your love and support. Take care. God bless. Bye.